So I want to welcome you to the second video in the series on assembling the IMSAI 8080 CP-A Rev4 kit. In this video, we're going to dive in and install the 44 LEDs. There'll be a lot of details in the video, so please join us as we do some soldering. So in this video, we're going to start assembling the board following the instructions from IMSAI, which starts with the LEDs. I've taken the manual out of the bindings just so the pages will lay flat. It gives us an introduction here to the the CP-A panel. Theory of operations, how it works. It's quite interesting how it was designed. I encourage you to read over this and study it. Like I said, it's really interesting design. We've got a couple of the original IMSAI photos of an assembled panel. We have the IMSAI provided build of materials. We have the Parastream IMSAI provided one over here. Really, this is a packing kit. This is, as I've said before, generally correct. There is an ECO here in the back. I mentioned this in the introduction video where there's some part substitutions. So this will call for 7410, and I believe that 7410 gets substituted for 74LS10 here. So there are some part substitutions. Logic-wise, it lowers the power consumption of the front panel a bit. Regular doesn't run as hot, and it doesn't affect operation in any way. It's just what's currently manufactured versus what was manufactured back in the day. And like I say, there's an ECO to cover that here. We get now down to actual assembly. Let me set these pages aside. I have unpacked it and checked. We did that in the previous video. Our contacts here aren't going to be corroded. It's a newly manufactured board. They talk about two things here. The mounting of the LED lamps and the switches, it's critical to make it look really nice. Those need to be aligned well to make it look professional and reasonable. On the original panel, talks about it here, you made a spacer that's set up underneath the LED that held the LED up off the board. It's really easy to bend those LEDs because they're floating above the board like that. This kit includes spacers here to get the proper height up off the board. You don't need to make the little jig they talk about making here. And it firms the LEDs up to the board, so you can't bend them back and forth. On my original panel, which I actually happen to have sitting here, we'll take a look at an original panel. This is an original IMSAI panel from back in the day. You can see here the LEDs are skewed and bent all over the place just from handling. This LED's been broke off and retacked on. It's too low. The height of the LEDs matters because the closer the LEDs are to that red filter that begins that sandwich here, the wider the viewing angle and the better it looks. If you had the LEDs down flush here on the board, they would have been quite a ways behind that red filter. And it, like I said, it affects the viewing angle and it just doesn't look as nice. Excuse me, when it's lit up. Set that back aside. So we're not going to make the jig he talks about here. There is an ECO in here included as well, as I mentioned in the first video. That just as a quick note on using the spacers. The LED goes through the spacer onto the board. The flat side of the LED faces down, same as it does on the original. Flush it up and solder. Let's get the board here out of the little protective bag. There's a note here on the board, just as there is on the original one, that all the LEDs have the flat down. The diode symbol has the line on the diode symbol down. So all the LEDs here mount with the flat in the physical package down towards the bottom of the board. And there's some other indications here that echo that. So I talk about a jig here, 1/8 inch material, blah, 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 using a hacksaw if you want to cut a slot for the leads. IMSAI started with the LEDs because if you're going to use that little jig to hold the LED height up, you can't have resistors and other components mounted. I have assembled test builds here where I do the LEDs last just because I find that more convenient. But like I said, I'm going to follow the IMSAI instructions here exactly. So really it's insert and solder each of the 44 LEDs at locations, LA0 to LA7. I don't have the parts placement diagram here in front of me. There's markings on the board where the LEDs go, and it's pretty obvious. Row of 8, row of 8, row of 8. It's a little less obvious in here, but there's another row of 8, another row of 8, and a row of 4 down here. I've got the soldering pencil fired up. I've got my pretty much normal tip on here that I use for this kind of work. I've got a tip cleaner. I've got some solder here off the roll. I am not going to solder every one of these on video. It would make for a very long, in my opinion, kind of boring video. But we'll do a few here together. I personally believe that had IMSAI continued production of the CP-A, they would have moved to using spacers just because it's a cleaner build. Another comment on modern LEDs is often the pins have a wider spot up here near the package, and that makes it difficult to work with as well and get the proper height. LED simply. Spacer slips on. Hopefully you can see that there's a black spacer there. I need to spot the flat on the LED, and of course the shorter lead on the package is on the same side as the flat, and we just insert an LED. Assuming I can actually insert an LED. And there's one in the board. That's our first mounted component. We'll put a second one in place here. Again, I've got the flat down, so the short lead towards the bottom of the board. I'm going to skew the leads out a bit there. I'm only going to solder one lead on each LED, and then I'm going to check it for flush, and if needed, I will reflow the solder and apply gentle pressure with my finger to make sure the LED is flush to the board. Hopefully I can keep my head out of shot here. Make sure my tip is well tinned and clean. And I'm just going to hit a couple of pads here. You can tell already this LED over here is floating. I can see these are both a little bit high on the board. I'm going to just apply some gentle pressure. And I felt it move up and firm up as the spacer and LED came together on the board. And there's the first two LEDs started. Now I can solder the other two pins. And the build is started. I need my flush cutters here to trim those leads. I like to slide one side of it down the lead till I feel the top of the solder through the tool, and then I cut there. I get a little bit more consistent cuts that way, and I'm not accidentally cutting down flush to the board. We have two LEDs in. We are underway. Very sweet. The flush down. I really should have brought the part placement diagram in here with me. We will certainly pull it out and use it. The remaining components, if I can get these big old fingers of mine to work. I'll put a couple in here. This is probably, for me, the 10th panel I would say I have assembled in the process of designing the board and the kit and everything. I've assembled a lot of these over the last 10 months or so. I've had some volunteers build a few of them up as well, so I can observe their work and observe where they struggle, those kind of things. Observe where things aren't totally clear to them. Kit builders in the modern world are used to having a silk screen on the board with all the parts, locations, and all that stuff. And kits back in the day just didn't have that stuff. I don't know why I rotated that the way I did, but we will get some solder on those. So it's a little bit more challenging without a silk screen. This is so fantastic. Assembling the first kit. There are some indications on here. They're probably going to be hard to see, but all the LED locations are marked. The components, here's U6, here's U7, the voltage regulator. These two pads up here, wires run off to the power. The power switch sits in this position, and that's where the power comes off the board to go back and switch the mains to the transformer on and off. You may be noticing a few little odd things like the openings here in the solder mask where you can see the bare board and they're skewed to each other and they're not perfectly round. That's how the original board was. I don't know how well that will show up on this board. But you can see the same thing here. There's a larger opening. They're kind of skewed funny. They're rotated. The intent here was to capture those kind of little details just because that's how IMSAI did it back in the day. On some of the other boards we're working on, you'll see more of that. You see the same thing here echoed on the back. Those are just details from the original board that have been captured. There's a note. It's down here. All AC pins go to the right. All LEDs go down. Now just look at how beautiful that is. The red on green here. We'll do a few more together here. And this will be a short video and wrap this video up. Because like I say, you don't need to sit and watch me insert 44 LEDs into spacers and solder them onto the board. Although I do get comments from subscribers to the channel about how much they really enjoy just watching me solder and the random dialogue, the things I say while I'm doing it. And I appreciate those feedbacks. I appreciate that, you know, people enjoy it. The kind of thought on the channel for me, and I haven't said this for a long time, is you're here in the lab with me. Perhaps you're standing looking over my shoulder, watching me work. And I'm just explaining to you what I'm doing. It's kind of an educational process. If I make a mistake, and I'm sure I will here on the board, we will share that mistake together. I don't hide my mistakes. I don't edit them out of the video. That's kind of the message to the newer builders about you're going to make mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. It just happens. It's part of the process, and don't be afraid of them. Catch them, correct them, and move on. There's no reason to be frustrated. I've been building kits the vast majority of my life, and like I said, I'm retired, so I've been doing this a little while. Still make mistakes. It's perfectly reasonable and normal. We're only human. And it just happens. I've got a video or two up there where I've shocked myself very well. One video where had I shocked myself at the most dangerous place in that power supply, I would have probably killed myself. Luckily I didn't, because I get to do things like work on this kit. So there's a couple more. I'll come back around and trim those leads. I'm going to put a couple in up here. There's LD0, flat is down. There's LD1, flat is down. Flare the leads a bit just so it doesn't drop out of the board. The board really wants to rotate here. I'll add some support there. And I really do recommend just taking a few LEDs at a time. Don't try to stuff the entire board and solder them all at once. I've done that on one board, and I can tell you it was a mess. It was hard. A bunch of the LEDs weren't in flush and were crooked, and it was just a major pain to clean up and get the LEDs all square. I've been joined by one of the dogs back here. You may hear a collar rattling a bit. That is Anna, the short-haired Chihuahua. I think she's about 12 years old. She was an adoption. We don't really know how old she was. Beyond she was full grown. When I adopted her, she likes to come back and see what I'm doing. Safety notes here. These leads do fly. You can see me working to get a good grip on them here just to make sure it doesn't go flying across the room. I am wearing glasses. I have had leads like this fly up and hit me in the glasses. Much better than going in my eye. So, respect proper safety. Wow, look at how beautiful that is coming together. We're a couple months out from Christmas. Nice Christmas colors. So, anyhow, I don't see a need to stuff all these and try to think of things to talk about. I'll get these stuffed. And I believe in the next video we address resistors, but we'll know when we get to that video and I look at the assembly instructions. I hope to catch you in that video. I want to thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, give me a like. If you think the channel for the subscription, go ahead and give me a subscription. In upcoming videos, we'll be installing the resistors and the ICs and all the other components, pushing all the way to the end of the build where we have a functional CP-A. So I hope to see you in those videos.